Module 5, Freedom and Determinism, Lecture 5C, Moral Justification. Moral justification. Often we come up with excuses to justify behavior that we believe to be immoral. One of the central tenets of existentialism is no excuses. We have free will and are responsible for our actions. Shakespeare may have said in the play Julius Caesar, "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. But it is human nature to find excuses for behavior we know to be wrong." In ancient Rome, people may have blamed the stars, astrology. Some people still do. Today, there are many other excuses for bad behavior. Let's explore some of these excuses. Number 1, God made me do it. Classical theism teaches that God is omniscient, knowing everything. God knows our future actions. So if God knows what we're going to do, how can we be responsible? In the Bible, God hardened Pharaoh's heart, so he would not let the Israelites go forth from slavery. Then God punished Pharaoh. Is this not unfair? If we can hold God responsible, then we are not responsible. 2, my genes made me do it. You hear that a lot today. If Shakespeare can speak of the fault being in our stars, moderns would say the fault is in our genes. We are genetically predisposed to behave in a certain way, including ways that are not ethical. 3, I was only following orders. This was the defense of Adolf Eichmann, put on trial in Israel in 1961 for overseeing the Holocaust. Picture on right. He was found guilty and hanged for crimes against humanity. He's the only person that Israel has ever put to death using capital punishment. In 1961, Stanley Milgram did a famous experiment with students at Yale University. Students were told by authority figures in lab coats to deliver stronger and stronger electric shocks to volunteers. The authority figures, lab assistants in white coats, urged the students to continue increasing the dosage, even when the victims were in pain. Most students followed the orders. In truth, the victims feeling the pain were simply actors, acting to see whether students would stop the treatment. But the students were following orders. 4, I was caught up in the moment. Another experiment with college students was conducted by Philip Zimbardo at Stanford University in 1971. This is often known as the Stanford Prison Experiment. Students were divided into prisoners and guards. They were given appropriate uniforms as prisoners or guards. Within a very short time, the student guards became extremely abusive toward the student prisoners. Zimbardo was forced to shut down the experiment early. Today, it's doubtful it would even be permitted. A similar result happened in Los Angeles in the 1992 Rodney King race riots. A group of rioters pulled an innocent truck driver, Reginald Denny, from his vehicle and beat him, leaving him permanently injured. They were arrested and claimed in the trial they were caught up in the moment. Number 5, it's not my responsibility. Let someone else do it. On March 13, 1964, in the streets of New York City, Kitty Genovese, a 28-year-old bartender, was beaten and murdered. She cried out several times. According to newspaper reports at the time, 38 people heard her cries, but nobody called the police or tried to intervene. More recently, questions have been risen about the accuracy of the newspaper accounts. This is an example of the bystander effect. It is someone else's responsibility. People simply do not want to get involved. Number 6, the Twinkie defense. In 1978, Dan White murdered San Francisco Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk, the first openly gay elected official in California. See the 2008 movie Milk, starring Sean Penn, to learn his story. On trial for murder, White's attorneys argued diminished capacity because of the sugar in his diet. One reporter called this the Twinkie defense, and the name is stuck. The argument led to a lighter sentence for voluntary manslaughter rather than murder. This lighter sentence led to riots. People committed murder because they had diminished capacity because of eating Twinkies. Number 7, it was out of my control. Karl Marx, 1818 to 1883, was a materialist who believed that everything that happens is due to economic forces. We will study Marx further. Sigmund Freud, 1856 to 1939, was also a materialist who believed that humans are driven by deep unconscious drives that are difficult to control. Materialists often believe that we are victims of forces beyond our control. Number 8, the devil made me do it. One of the oldest ideas in Western religious thought is there are two divine forces acting in the world, one good and one evil. God is good, and the devil, Satan, Lucifer, is evil. Satan comes from the Hebrew word Hasatan in the book of Job, who was one of God's angels who took the role of prosecutor. Lucifer also comes from the book of Isaiah, referring to a fallen star. Many ancient religious traditions, from Zoroastrianism to Manichaeism, a Christian heresy, spoke of good and evil gods. The evil is even part of modern culture. For example, the force in the dark versus the dark side in the Star Wars movies. When we do evil, it is easy to blame a spiritual force in the universe. It is human nature to blame someone or something for our failings. We even have a word for it, rationalization. Part of existentialist philosophy is no excuses. We must take responsibility for our actions.